Okay, so we actually, for the first step, we said was this thing about stop, so feeling it in the body, being with it, witnessing it. And the second step, you could say, is just to start working with all these instruments and tools that help us getting out of these emotions. So we're working with what sometimes is called the antidotes. So we're working with ways that will help us with these emotions in the longer term. So that's what I'm going to talk about first. I'd like to go back to this thing about skill, because the word skill, the word for ignorance in Buddhism is called avidya, and the Buddha is saying that this is the cause of our suffering in the Four Noble Truths. And another translational, alternative translation for avidya is a lack of skill. And that's another thing I find so incredibly encouraging. So we're not stupid, we're just not skilled. And just suppose that we are learning to play an instrument. You know, we're buying a violin, as I have done once, borrowed this violin from a friend, and she was going to teach me how to play it. Well, it's not like when you're holding it specifically, not a violin, that you can create some wonderful notes or that you create a beautiful piece of music. It's just not happening, is it? Unless, no, let's not go there. I don't know. That is just generally not happening. What we do is we need to practice. We need to practice. We need to know all these intricate bits, like we need to know when to apply a particular pressure of the hand, and there's all these things that we need to know, and at some point they seem to become part of our being, and we're becoming skilled. Well, this is the way with the emotions as well. So we can't expect ourselves to be skilled dealing with this if we actually haven't tried. And obviously, we've been trying a lot, no doubt, in our lives. But what I mean is applying the antidotes, the remedies that we've been passed on by the Buddha and all the practitioners of the past. So I'd like to go back to these Four Noble Truths, just to refer them to our topic, the difficult emotion. So the difficult emotion, I said that earlier, you could equate that to stress or suffering. So basically what we're saying first is there is stress, there is difficult emotions, and by witnessing that and acknowledging that, that's an incredibly important step. So that's what we're trying to do first, acknowledging this is going on. There is this suffering going on. There is this difficult emotion going on. Now we also have the cause of stress, which is the second noble truth, where we learn from the tradition. This is this ignorance. There is these distortions going on. We just don't know what to do, basically, at that point. We just don't know what we do. We're just not skilled enough to deal with what's coming up for us. So that's our second noble truth in my speak today. And then we go to the third. The third noble truth is there is a cessation of stress, cessation of the difficult emotion. And what we learn from this is this is actually possible. It is actually possible to somehow get out of this. It's possible, and we know it's possible. And then we've got the path leading away from difficult emotion, the path leading away from stress, the path leading away from suffering, which is our fourth noble truth. So we have a lot of tools, a lot of instruments, methods that we've inherited, as it were, that have been passed on, that we can apply. And the skill, part of the skill is knowing when to apply what, if that makes sense. So that is part of our skill set. What we need to learn is when do we apply which method when we are suffering from these difficult emotions. And that, again, is something that we can read about, I could tell you about, but it is also something that you need to do in order to see if it works or doesn't work. And this is why I think the whole practice, if you manage to do it, is so important. I just see we've got 2 pearls, which is absolutely lovely. But would you want me to remove either of you? Or do you want to both stay in? Just let me know. I'll just leave you both in. That's probably fine. You might have an iPad and a phone or something. That's completely fine. Okay, so I translated this whole thing, the Four Noble Truths, to the clouds. You know, we had this image of the clouds in our title. So you could say there's suffering, there are clouds, okay? And these clouds, that's our second noble truth, are formed because of certain conditions. And then there is an open sky, which is the cessation. And then you could say there is a way to dissolve the clouds. I don't know. I just like that. I just like to find these kind of analogies. Now I've got some quotes here of, they are by Thanissaro Bhikkhu. I really love the work by Thanissaro. I find him incredibly lucid. So I do use him quite a lot if I want to understand a bit more about these Dharmic concepts. So he is saying this thing about skill, avidya. That's where I found it, actually. So he is saying it's about getting skilled and not about doing it wrong. Avidya, the Pali word for ignorance, is the opposite of vidya, which means not only knowledge, but also skill. As in the skills of a doctor or an animal trainer. I always love that, an animal trainer. The skill of an animal trainer. Yeah, I love that. So when the Buddha focuses on the ignorance that causes stress and suffering, saying that people suffer from not knowing the Four Noble Truths, he's not simply saying that they lack information or direct knowledge of those truths. He's also saying that they lack skill in handling them. They suffer because they don't know what they're doing. So that's Thanissaro, which I'll put in my email to you tomorrow. And then another one by Thanissaro, which I've also used in my Tonglen course. This is how much I love this particular quote. I'll read this one out again. We focus on suffering because it's a learning opportunity. In fact, the Buddha actually has us treat suffering with respect. He calls it a noble truth. It's not just an everyday, ordinary old truth. He says to look at it as a noble truth, something worthy of respect, something worthy of comprehension. Really look into it. Don't dismiss it. Do not try to run away from it. Open yourself up to learning from it. So that, I would say, is a beautiful way of looking at the difficult emotions. So we're just seeing the difficult emotions as a learning opportunity, and also seeing the difficult emotions as an opportunity to practice, and also seeing these difficult emotions as something worthy of respect, And now respect, I think I'll talk more about it later in this particular session. Respect, you could say, is another way of looking at metta, I think, loving kindness. So something of that respect for life, respect for what's other, respect for what's different, respect for what is difficult, that I think that we can bring to our experience. And that's what I hope we'll learn to do. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I think we can make a start doing that. Just really respect what's coming up for us in our experience. It's worthy of our respect. Yeah, it's worthy of our attention. It's worthy of us learning from it. Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to say about this particular topic of skill, around skill. So we've arrived at that first step. The first step is stop, and the second step is we're going to apply the remedies to the difficult emotions. So that's our next step. And we talk more about it after we've done some meditation and a break. Sound like a TV personality here, somebody on the news. But never mind, we're all TV presenters these days. let's do some meditation. I'm going to guide us through a 15-minute practice, and I'll tell you more about the ideas behind it. Well, you hear about them in the meditation itself, but I'll just going to guide us through 15 minutes of practice. 1-5. So make yourself comfortable. Just really giving yourself a bit of time to settle in. However that is. Feeling the seat underneath, just a good place to start. Just acknowledging here's a body, the earth below, body with lots of different sensations in it, on it, around it. Don't really need to know at this moment what the nature is of that body, but we can directly perceive the sensations of the body right now, anything that we're noticing. And we could just start by getting this sense of respect that we talked about earlier, something about just respecting whatever comes up. It doesn't matter what it is, but we can treat it with our respect. Some sort of kindness, whatever we're noticing right now, is all these different sensations. Different emotion, perhaps any emotional mood. Receiving it with respect. And if that word doesn't work for you, you might want to use care. Or kindness, plain old kindness. Any thoughts, just received with kindness, respect. And even image works. We could use the image of a sun shining on all our experience equally, illuminating it, warming it. The light of the sun, gentle, and now noticing in the body any parts of the body that feel a bit tight, a bit difficult. painful perhaps. And we could receive those sensations with kindness, but perhaps also with compassion. And similarly, any thoughts or emotions that feel painful somehow, receiving them with respect and compassion. And if an image works for you right now, we could think of the sun again, but now the sun is going down. We have this beautiful sunset. It's a bit darker. As an image for our compassion, as a response to these parts of our experience that are difficult, challenging, painful. And then also finding in the body any places that feel pleasant, open, at ease perhaps. It might take a while finding them, but there might be small bits and pieces. Your elbow or your toe, anywhere. Where it feels at ease. And you could also look out for any emotion that might be positive, sense of being at peace or kind or generous. Many thoughts that are friendly, receiving them all with respect and care. And if an image works for you, we could think about this sun coming up, illuminating the drops of dew, bird song, somehow rejoicing in these parts of the experience that are happy, relaxed, and at peace. And then also just knowing all of this experience is because we're human beings with a body, with thoughts, emotions. All of this experience completely dependent on conditions. We could extend a sense of respect into the entire body, mind, and if an image works, we could think about the full moon in the sky, illuminating your landscape of body, emotion, thought, images. Illuminating it with the mysterious light of wisdom and acceptance. And from here, we can just sit for a few minutes more. With our experience, with respect. We'll just sit for another minute. And so that was our meditation. And, sometimes I'm sure our minds might be too distracted or to sort of get into the meditation. And I have recorded it, so it'll be part of the link I'll be sending to you tomorrow. You might want to try it again if it somehow didn't work. Well, it might not have worked at all for you, but that's okay. And so we talked about skill, and we've done this practice. Some of you might have noticed I use these images from, these are actually images from Analio, the images of the sun. People come across those images? Anybody wave their hand if you have? No, doesn't seem like it. Well, anyway, they're images for the sun. These images of the sun I used in the meditation are images for the Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes. And I'll tell you a bit more about that later on. So this next bit is about the tools, some of the antidotes, as it were, that we can try out when working with the difficult emotions. And what is really interesting about any of this work that we're doing, we're bringing mindfulness to the difficult emotion, where we feel it in the body, where we feel it in terms of like what kind of thoughts we're having, identifying the emotions, so bringing more mindfulness to that. Bringing kindness and respect to it. When we are applying these tools of the Dharma to the difficult emotion, somehow we're also developing the antidote for that difficult emotion. So I find that incredibly interesting. So that's, I think, is also encouraging. So when we're working with fear and the tools of the Dharma, we're developing fearlessness. You see what I mean? When you're working with ignorance, you're developing wisdom. So it's just so simple. It's just very simple like that. So if we're loving the difficult emotion or treating it with kindness, we're also developing that quality of acceptance. And when we're treating ourselves with kindness, and we're treating a difficult emotion with kindness, we might also develop patience. You see what I mean? So that's how it seems to work. And in the what always strikes me when I speak about this topic, particularly the topic of fearlessness. If you look in the Buddhist text, the older Buddha text, there's hardly anything like what could be antidotes for fear. And the antidote for fear is just meeting it and look it in the eye, like the leaning into word that somebody used earlier on when we were checking in. So that's just something I think that we could think about. When we're working with the difficult emotions through the tools of the Dharma, we will be developing the antidotes, and the antidotes, that is the positive emotion that we need to sustain all of this. In terms of difficult emotions and mindfulness, the characteristic of the difficult emotions is that there's hardly any awareness. We notice that when we're very angry, it's very hard to have body awareness, isn't it? When we're angry, or any kind of difficult emotion often just does its thing, and there's hardly any awareness or mindfulness around with it. So that is some of the work that we're doing is bringing mindfulness into it. But the more we're practicing with mindfulness, also in a meditation, for instance, the more stability we're creating in order to actually look at this stuff. Just thought that might be useful as a bit of background information. So if the positive emotions are around, mindfulness is so much more stable and easy to be around for a while. When it's difficult emotions, it's like choppy water. It's really hard for mindfulness to stick there. So that's what we are trying to do. We're trying to bring that mindfulness into this sort of unexplored territory, as it were. And so it's not an easy task, but it can be done. I was just going to ask you, maybe to put you in the chat, like what kind of practices do you know from the Buddhist tradition for developing positive emotion? Just curious to see what we have in terms of the knowledge and the wisdom of this collective. Any practices that you already know from the Buddhist tradition that develop positive emotion? Be curious to see what you come up with. Gratitude, yeah. Yeah, so we've got gratitude. You've got the 5 fingers gratitude practice, which I know from mindfulness tradition. Mantra, we've got metta, ritual. Mantra is so wonderful, isn't it? I could, talk about any of these. Metta, ritual, visualizations, guru yoga. Metta, rejoicing in merit, lovely, isn't it? Self-metta, metta, and the Brahma Viharas, meditation, reflection, dwelling on, yes, gratitude, visualization, sit with it, yes, 7-point mind training, noticing, metta practice, generosity practice, being in the flow. We've got such a lot already, don't we? Amazing. The thing is, like, you should just remember all of this whilst we're in a difficult emotion, shouldn't we? That's often the task. And the thing about remembering it is we will remember when we practice. You see what I mean? We're kind of planting the seeds for all of this to come up. The practice, when we're practicing, we're planting the seeds. So it's going to be more likely that this is going to come up around a difficult emotion, so we can use it and apply it. Imagery, listening, curiosity. So the active listening, curiosity is also, that's something that you can bring to your own experience, couldn't you? You could just bring that listening quality to your own experience. Generosity, sitting in the presence of the Buddha, that are all very, just bodhiyangas, which is the enlightenment factors. Yes, following the precepts, we're going to talk about that too. Save the chat, yes, of course. And may I be well. Yeah, people can save the chat if they like. There is these 3 dots, hopefully for you, that you could use. I could also make a list and send it in the email tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. So that's just coming out of that chat now. So we've got a lot, don't we? To utilize. So any of those practices that we already know we can use, as long as we remember them, and we need to practice them in order for them to come up. But the kindness, we did some of that in the meditation. Bringing kindness to the difficult emotion, I would say, is such an important practice. And I can't say I've done enough of that myself. I'm still practicing this. But I think that is one of the most valuable things you can do, bringing kindness and compassion and respect to your experience. I think sometimes when we're sitting in a metta bhavana, we have this sort of imaginary self that we are trying to give metta to, and it's often a bit of a weird kind of undertaking, isn't it? And but it's much more simple than that, I think. Just whatever we're experiencing, whatever is coming up in our direct experience right now, we can practice with that, with kindness. And if it's something wonderful, we can still practice with it. We can practice with it with that kind of like a quality of joy. Here's something beautiful happening. So there's a lot to practice with. All of our experience we can practice with if we want to. And that is going to develop these positive qualities much more. And we need these the strengthening of these positive qualities to stabilize the mind and to help us with that work with the difficult emotions that we're doing. A thing I thought I could share with you here is the negativity bias. This is also from the mindfulness world, but I think it is very useful to know about it if you didn't know about it already. So this is somebody called Rick Hanson. He does draw from the Buddhist tradition. I'll send you a link to the relevant article tomorrow, but this is something that's called the negativity bias, and sometimes it's known as there is Teflon and Velcro involved here, and the image is that positive experience is like Teflon; it just slides through the system. There it goes. And difficult experience, difficult emotions is more like Velcro. It's sort of like it's just sticking to us somehow. And so he's saying that this is the negativity bias is an evolutionary thing. So just suppose that, it's just amazing we're here in a particular way. If you see what difficulties our ancestors have had to get here, we whatever culture we're coming from, we've had hunger, we've had wars, we've had all sorts of things that have happened to us as human beings in the past. We've been threatened by other human beings, but also by illness. And some of, I remember I did this 3-month retreat a few years ago in Parc Le Breos, which is in Wales, here in the UK, the United Kingdom. And I read about this area that we were in, like 1300. They had the plague there, and 9 out of 10 people died. Can you imagine that? 9 out of 10 people died, and just the trauma that must have caused in a population. And so the idea is that we've come so far as we have because we've been paying attention to the negative, the threatening aspects of our lives. So we wouldn't be here as human beings if our ancestors haven't had those qualities of resilience and of noticing when there is danger, and noticing when there is something kind of rustling in the behind the bushes or whatever, or you see what I mean? So the brain seems to have developed in this way that it's very much focused to perceiving the threatening bits and pieces. Now, most of our lives, normal sort of lives, or I wouldn't say normal, because I don't want to make a value judgment about it, but a lot of our lives are fairly for a lot of us there's not a huge amount of threat from humans. I know some of our lives there has been that threat. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that a lot of that threat might not be threat that's happening right now, but it might have been threat that's happened in the past, or it's just our brain is geared up perceiving threat, difficulty. So this seems to be our inheritance as a species, that this is the case. Well, this is this research that says that. You can just think about it and see what you think about it. So on the basis of this, it seems like if you had one positive experience, you need one negative experience, you need like 5 positive experiences to kind of balance things out. So I was thinking sometimes about, like if you go to a shop and you have a horrible experience, you tell 5 friends. If you've got a good experience, you won't tell, you just tell 1 friend, like that. So if you apply that to the work that we're doing, so we've got a lot of our attention and our energy has gone into developing the difficult emotion, but not a lot of our attention has gone into developing the positive emotion. So that's my spiel here today. So this is another reason why I think it's incredibly important to much more consciously concentrate on developing this positive emotion. And we've seen in the chat all these various ways that we're offered that we can actually do this with. So as I said, the first one I would really try to do is like moment by moment, bringing kindness to your experience. That is a way of training yourself that's going to be very effective. Respect and kindness to whatever you're experiencing, bringing your compassion to it. And then we've had in the chat, we've had the Brahma Viharas have passed through. Some of you know them, like the inside of your pocket. Some of you don't know them, so I'll just go through them very briefly. So the Brahma Viharas, traditionally, there are these Buddhist positive emotions. That's what you get when the obscurations would fall away. You get the metta, that I think all of us know, the loving kindness, and the image could say is that sun that's just illuminating everything. And then you have the karuna, which is compassion, and compassion would just come up when you see suffering, and meeting that with kindness and respect. That's the willingness to help, to reach out. So that's compassion. And then we also have the mudita, the sympathetic joy. So if we notice something beautiful is happening, something positive is happening, just rejoicing in that. Somebody was mentioning rejoicing in merits in the chat. So that's how that would work. It's not like you're lying. You're still knowing about, if you do this rejoicing in somebody's merits, it's not like you don't know they're actually sometimes really impatient and they can be unkind and they've done this horrible thing. It's not like that. It's more like you're drawing out these positive aspects, these aspects in that person that you admire, that are friendly, that are kind, that are helpful. So that's also a practice to strengthen this positive emotion of mudita. And then we have the image of the sun coming up and the birds singing. That's that image. And for compassion, it's that sun going down. A more heavy kind of beautiful light still, but there is that poignancy of it, kind of like a bit ending. There's a bit some sort of difficulty there often. And then you have the image for the equanimity, which is that moonlight just shining on everything. So there is this knowing like this is how it is, because we have this human condition and there's all these different conditions playing out to produce what's happening in me right now, what's happening in others. So then we have the equanimity. Anyway, quite a short sort of summary here. Hope remotely helpful. And we've got meditations for that, don't we? We've got the metta bhavana, loving kindness meditations. I think a lot of us just find it maybe a bit difficult, and particularly if you find it difficult, I think that's when you should do it, because I think that's also when that kind of mind comes up, that just a kind of I think that's the moment when we can start to actually push into that difficult, being used to difficult experience and starting to lean into this more positive experience. Hope that made some sort of sense. I'm not sure. Yeah, and then somebody mentioned generosity, which is the letting go of holding on is generosity, isn't it? It's in Buddhist sense, it's on top of the list of virtues, but we've got all of these different ways that we can practice positive emotion, but whichever way we're trying, this is going to develop the antidote. So that's the thought behind it. How am I doing? Got some thumbs up. Yeah, that's good. That's nice. A few thumbs up. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking so much, but you've talked a lot with each other at the beginning, so I'm talking a bit more now. So this is my topic, which is about developing positive emotion and the reason why we need to do that. And just saying that this very simple way of doing it is just right in a moment. And that, I think there's no end to practicing that, just remembering to bring kindness to your difficult emotion, respect, equanimity, or just working with the difficult emotion as it's around. So my next bit, which is another short presentation, is about ethics, actually. Somebody did mention it, I think, as a remedy. in the chat. And I'm a bit sad sometimes that I think ethics has a bit of a bad reputation. I think we're maybe find it boring, or there's something about judgment in it, or there's something about it that we start blaming ourselves. I don't think any of that should apply, because I think it's so helpful to look at it in relation to the difficult emotion. And just for a few reasons. My first reason for bringing it in at this point is that ethics is at the very basis of that respect, that compassion that we're trying to practice in relation to the difficult emotion. So basically, finding a skillful response to the difficult emotion is an ethical action, if that makes sense at all. So basically, when we do experience a difficult emotion, the ethical, skillful response is to start applying these remedies that we talked about. Is the remedy of love, the remedy of kindness, the remedy of acceptance, etc. The remedy of applying our some sort of discernment to it. But sometimes I think what happened with our experience is we are responding to it in a way that isn't so helpful and skillful. So that is also an ethical action. So, and we learn from ethics, the tradition, that actions have consequences. So this is a invitation again to just look at this, and also knowing that in terms of these difficult emotions, they are often unskillful mind states. And we know that if we act from these mind states, we end up harming ourselves or others in some way or form. And so seeing that connection really with the respect and the motivation for working with the difficult emotion could also come from this intention, forming the intention to respond with skillfully. So for me and the difficult emotions, it's something that could act as a motivation, this intention of not wanting to inflict more suffering on yourself or others. And that's another way of remembering that we could apply the remedies, as it were. And I think there is a bit of confusion often with this ethics in terms of our experience and how we respond to it. So you could say that our experience and how it arises is vipaka. So that's probably some people have heard of that, and some of you haven't. But whatever comes up in me and you, whoever, according to this the Buddhist tradition, is vipaka. So it's like the weather. So something comes up, be it a sensation in the body, any thoughts or any emotion, that just comes up. Because it's dependent on conditions, just comes up like the weather. So you could say it's a resultant. And then comes the next bit, which is like how to respond to that. And that's where this word karma comes in, which basically means actions, like how do you respond to it? And so this is, I think, just something to clarify with the difficult emotions as well. So the difficult emotion comes up, which is a bit like the weather. It just arises on independence on conditions. You can't do anything about those at that moment. But the only thing you can do is respond in a way that might be helpful rather than not helpful, if that makes any sense. I think it does. That's why I'm sharing this with you. But as another motivation to approach this work with the difficult emotion. Yeah, so you could say that skillful actions lead to more open outcomes, more happy outcomes, and unskillful actions lead to more unhappy outcomes. And we all know that these actions, they stem from the mind. All actions start with mind, don't they? And in the Dhammapada, you've got this beautiful verse, which I shall share with you tomorrow in the email. Mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief, they're all mind rules. If with an impure mind a person speaks or acts, suffering follows him like the wheel that follows the foot of the ox. And then mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief, they're all mind ruled. If with a pure mind a person speaks or acts, happiness follows him like never departing shadow. Well, I don't know about you, but I'd like to do the second one rather than the first one. But another motivation really to just look at our mind, look at our mind states, and in terms of our actions, if we manage to somehow know about this, that I think probably all of us, just by where we're at in terms of our lives, we've led our lives, we're here in a Buddhist session, we probably have done a fair amount of reflecting on how this exactly works, but it is an interesting thing to look at. And I just remember that when I started out practicing Buddhism, that I had a night where I woke up, like I just couldn't sleep. I woke up because I had this argument with a friend. And then it's easy to see, isn't it? Then in that sense, it is easy to see. There is some sort of correspondence there. And it's not like I'm going to blame myself, but it is more like, okay, I can see there's this relationship here. So what can I do? I can undertake to try the next time. I could try to see if I can speak with my friend. I could apologize, or I could write a letter, or you know your ways. You've done it many times before. But there is just that invitation again to see there is that correspondence there. It's not like you've done anything wrong, but that is, it whatever it is, the difficult emotion does depend on conditions. And sometimes there's parts of these conditions that you can influence somehow. And what I also find really interesting actually is I remember when I was a student, my friends would know when I started to be a bit like I don't know what the English word is at the moment, because I'm casting my way back to a Dutch situation. But when I would get grumpy, that would be word. When I became a bit grumpy, they'd start to feed me. They just start to feed me, say, she needs a bit of food here. Let's give her a banana or an apple or a piece of cake. And it's just things like that are just also so useful for us to know that, okay, when we haven't eaten properly, we're much more volatile, aren't we? And difficult emotions are so much easier to get hold of us. So let's just try to, if we can, to have a bit of a regular pattern in eating. Sleep as well. Lack of sleep is, like how hard it sometimes can be when you haven't slept, and it's just much more weak in terms of the mind, how you can work with your difficult emotions. So there are these conditions that you can explore in your life that you might be able to do something about. So that's what I'm trying to say here, is there's these conditions. Some of them you can manipulate, as it were, and a lot of them you can't. They're just conditioned. So to see that correspondence. And then if you look at the texts, we can see from the texts that the mind states of peace and ease and joy, they always have, if you look at the Buddhist scriptures, you have the exposition about ethics beforehand. So we know that a more ethical type of behavior will lead to more positive mind states. So it's a fairly straightforward correspondence, but it is not about blame, because nobody's done anything wrong in that sense when you're feeling something. So when you're actually feeling something, what you can do is just see what is a skillful way of responding. And blaming yourself, I'm afraid to say here, is not a skillful way of responding. And then you can blame yourself about blaming yourself, but that's also not a skillful way of responding. The skillful way of responding is to just receive it with friendliness and kindness and patience. And if that doesn't work, give yourself a break. Yeah, give yourself a break. We're human beings. Yeah, so that's another thing to reflect on. This is the human condition. So we can just reflect on that as well and give ourselves a break because of that. Yeah. Yeah, and just giving ourselves a break, it just means, I think, just the friendliness. And maybe you could say giving yourself a break is a bit like compassion. What do you think about that? I think so. So just looking at my notes here, if I've got anything else on this. Yeah, so you could say that practicing ethics is like encouraging the skillful strands of the way our being is patterning out and discouraging the more unskillful ones. And so you can create the seeds in the present that can be blossoming in the future. And then, like, for instance, with the Metta Bhavana, just having this intention of sitting there and develop loving kindness is going to have an effect. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll feel the effect in the meditation, but it is, you're just practicing it. So the effects are going to be noticeable after. It's just that we're sowing these seeds, planting these seeds, and then for them to germinate in the future. So this is what actions mean, have consequences actually means. Yeah. So we're planting these positive seeds, and they're going to create more positive mind states in the future for us, and that's going to help us with the difficult emotion. So practicing ethics, in my view at least, is the same as developing compassion. And we're acting out of a deep respect for ourselves, and we're also acting out of a deep respect for everyone else. And that's at the heart, I think, of ethics. Doesn't mean we always get it right, but I think it is something that will help us with the difficult emotion. So I'll just go back to what I said, that the first step is this stop, feeling it in the body, practicing with mindfulness, not pushing it away, not getting overwhelmed. So that was our first step. And I think I'll just repeat at this stage what I think the second step is in this work, and that is applying these antidotes, applying all the remedies that we have at our grasps. We just need to remember, don't we? We'll remember by practicing it. That's how we will remember. What I thought we could do is just have a few minutes of reflection. So we'll just not speak and maybe just sort of percolate, allow this to kind of go through the system a bit. And then we'll have some space again to bring anything that we'd like to question or query or observe or just put forward. So just do a few minutes. I'll just sit quietly here for a few minutes. I hope you'll do the same. And then we see if there's anything that anyone wants to say. Okay, we'll just, I'll set my watch for 2 minutes here. Just wanted to, I know we're approaching, so no, don't know, Barbara, but we'll get a chance to speak because we're approaching the end of the session. I wanted to respond to Maria Jose, just saying that I don't think we can be in control of our emotions. I don't think we can be in charge. It's more like we can have an influence. So that's you know, as I think all of us know, that sometimes these emotions just get the better hand, and then not the better hand, but they're just like, you know, you notice yourself speaking out of a difficult emotion, going like, oh no, I wish I hadn't said that. It wasn't like you were in control. But what you can do is then, whenever you notice that this is happening, you could start applying the remedies, as it were. You can start working with it. You can do a few things. You could apologize and at least sort of give yourself a break and be kind to yourself. So I'd say talk about influence rather than about being in control or in charge. It's just something that I think, yeah, would be important. I'm so sorry, Barbara. I'm not sure whether, I don't think we're going, no, you're okay with that? Okay, thank you. We'll have more chance to speak next week. We start again with the breakout groups, talking about the home practice. So I hope that you'll be able to do some. And if you don't feel that you can't come to the session. You can come to the session, but then just that's what's going to happen. I'm just going to talk about the home practice briefly. I'll send it in an email to you tomorrow. If you haven't received it by the end of the day, do let me know. I've put my email in the chat. So hopefully you'll see that. And if you have not able to do anything with the chat, it's yb@yashobodhi.org. YB, short for yashobodhi.org. And then for this practice for this week, I would invite you to pay attention to positive emotion this whole week, the coming week, just particularly, I mean, of course, we'll notice the difficult emotion as well, but pay particular attention to the positive emotion this week. And then just also feel it in the body, maybe describe any images it comes with or any thoughts that come up with it. And write a few things down every day about that. And maybe if you can, just read your notes before you come to the session next week, so you're a bit primed and know what's about. The other exercise, it's a writing exercise again. Apologies if you didn't like it, but I hope that you'll like this one. It's called The Great Zoo, and it's a writing practice that invites you to imagine your difficult emotion as an animal, but also the positive emotion, and then describe it. Anyway, I love that exercise. I hope you'll like it too, but I'll send it to you in an email. I think that's all for now. We're a few minutes over, but I hope that's okay. For those of you on the other side of the world, I hope you'll sleep really well. And for those of you who are starting the day, I hope that goes well too. So hopefully see you next week, okay? Thanks so much for coming. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Very, very, very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.